Perfect. All right, welcome to our webinar for this week. My name is Anson Hidajat. So we're going to be switching it up a little bit. If you have attended our webinars before, this week's going to be a little bit different in terms of the content. Preface this with InfoPath 101. This is sort of a very basic level topic. We're going to be talking about the rules manager in InfoPath. So we've gotten a lot of feedback. Some people have said, oh, that your webinars are great, but it's a little bit too complicated, a little bit too advanced for my sort of expertise or my sort of knowledge that I have in InfoPath. So this is kind of taking us a little bit of a step back. So for some of you, this may be basically a refresher, but hopefully for others, maybe you'll learn perhaps a trick or two or something along the line, something that's new. So I'll be talking about the rules manager. But basically the idea here is just kind of educate you a little bit more about sort of how rules work in InfoPath. We'll talk also a little bit about the different types of rules, talking about debugging rules, and I'll be bouncing back and forth between InfoPath and my slide deck actually quite a bit, simply because I want to show you a bunch of techniques and just sort of to get you a little bit more interactive, with the application itself. All right, so without further ado, so in terms of the agenda today, pretty straightforward. We'll have a presentation. I'll have a bunch of demos, sort of just mini demos, actually, not like a one big demo or anything like that. Like I said, I'll be jumping back and forth between the presentation and InfoPath quite a bit. And if you have any questions or anything or any comments, please feel free to leave those in the chat window. I'll try to get to those at the very end. I think what I'll do is I'll just, it's a fairly short presentation, maybe about 15-20 minutes. So I'll just go through the presentation as fast as I can, and that way I'll stick around at the very end, and feel free to have as many questions as you want and put those in the chat window. I'll try to answer them on a first-come, first-served basis. All right, so rules manager. So rules manager is what you see here on the right-hand side. It's a screenshot of the task pane, also called the rules manager. So what is it? Basically, it lets your form designer able to add custom logic to your form. You can go and add, many different types of rules. I'll talk about that in a bit. But basically, if you have any sort of business logic, you want to be able to go and customize that in your rule. So, as a rule. So, if you think of other form technologies like Adobe, or maybe even very simple kinds like Wufoo or SurveyMonkey, they do have some sort of rules as well. But at the same time, the rules aren't as robust or aren't as complex as InfoPath. InfoPath lets you bring in rules that let you switch views, that add custom data validation, that show and hide specific controls. Whereas these other technologies don't let you do all the types of things that InfoPath can let you do. So that alone is kind of one of the big features that InfoPath offers. That alone also kind of really sells InfoPath as a very complex, very powerful forms technology. So just a little bit about the rules manager itself. It was introduced in 2010. Not that rules were introduced in 2010. The actual task pane itself, the UI, was introduced in 2010. It's a huge improvement over the old UI in 2003 and 2007. It mainly had modal dialogues. The modal dialogues were annoying, excuse me, simply because you had to finish filling out your rule before you could actually go and interact with the form itself. So you had to go and get a lot of dialogues upon dialogues sometimes, and to click OK on all those dialogues before you actually go and fill out the form or actually modify your canvas at all. Whereas the task pane is actually really nice. You can see your rules and see your form at the same time without having to move around too much. So I said rules were available in 2007, but the rules manager brought a few things to the table in 2010. What are they? Like I said, we moved from the dialogues to the task pane itself. So that's a really, really big advantage. So now you can go and interact rules with rules and the form at the same time. You can basically go and click on all your fields, or you can click on all your controls, and you can see the rules at a glance as opposed to having to pop up a dialog that showed all of your rules. You can copy and paste rules. That's actually a really, really big feature in the rules manager now. It makes it a lot easier, especially if you have very similar rules, or if you have just the exact same rule that you want to copy on multiple controls or on multiple fields, you can go and copy and paste those. And rule names. Being able to add rule names yourself are very, very nice, because if you're doing a form now, and then maybe down the line you want to return to it, and it's a fairly complex form, or maybe there are some complex rules on a button or on a field, a rule name is really good, because then now you can go back to it and immediately understand what is going on. As long as you're giving it a meaningful name, of course it's easy to go and understand, pick it up, or if you have another form designer take a look at your form down the line, then it's a lot easier for them to understand what's going on as well. There are a few entry points in the Rules Manager. At this point, I'm going to go and actually open up the InfoPath here. So I got my demo form here, I got my rules form, and there are 4 entry points. So here I have the home ribbon, and the home tab in the ribbon. I have manage rules, so I can click on manage rules. That'll open that up. If I go and click on control, and then I go into the properties tab, and you'll see here there's also the same button, manage rules. That'll open up the same thing. And there's 2 entry points in the contextual ribbon, or in the contextual menu, sorry. There's the rules option here, and you can click on manage rules, same thing. And finally on field, you can right click a field in the contextual menu, and you can see here rules will pop up in the rules manager as well. So you have 4 entry points, pretty easy to go and access the rules manager. So there are 3 different rule types, and I'll cover those right now on what the differences are, when to use each of them. So we'll start off with validation. So basically, validation rules are used to indicate any errors that you want, any customized errors on specific fields. There are out-of-box errors. Like for example, schema errors you're gonna get for free. So for example, if you have if you have a text field or a string field, and if you have a number field and then you start typing in a string into it, so it's expecting a 1, 2, 3, or 4, but you type in ABC, then it's going to give you an error. That sort of thing is a validation error, same exact thing, except that's sort of given to you for free because of the schema itself. This is different on the other hand. This is actually a designer customized error. So if I wanted a number, and then for example, I only wanted to allow the user to put in the numbers 1 through 10, then in that case, I can go and create a validation rule and limit the user to only put in those values. There's many different types of validation errors that you could do. There's formatting rule. Formatting rule lets you apply any text formatting to it, any changes like font, color, shading, bold, italics, that sort of thing. You can also use formatting rules to hide or disable controls. And in fact, I would say that maybe 95, 99%, maybe even, formatting controls are actually used to hide. Hiding is probably one of the most useful rules that you can do. So you can hide a control, say if it's a section or if it's a text box, you can hide that control when a particular field on the form is equal to false. And finally, the last rule type is an action rule. So you can apply many different actions. We're calling them actions simply because it's kind of a catch-all. But there's different actions like switch view. You can set values of other fields. You can submit the form. You can query data. You can send data to a web part. You can close the form. So there's various different types of actions. So it's actually worthwhile going and exploring what the different actions are, and also be aware that the actions are actually dependent on the context. So for example, if you add an action on a button, you'll get a different set of actions than you would if you were to add a button on add an action on a particular field. So like for example, on a button, you can actually switch views, whereas on a field, you wouldn't be able to switch views. So So just, yeah, again, play around with it a little bit. If you're unfamiliar with what actions are, you can take a look at it and see what the different types of actions are. All right, so one of the quick demos that I wanted to do here is a cannot be blank demo. What's really nice about this is that it's a formatting rule. It's very, very simple. I like to do it with all of my forms. But the idea here is that, there's a little red asterisk. So I'll show you here what I mean. So if I preview my form, there's a little red asterisk on the right-hand side. And if I hover over it, you can see that there's a tooltip that says cannot be blank. And this is nice because it tells me, okay, this is a required field. I need to be able to go and fill out this field before I submit the form. But sometimes, at the very end of the form, I click on submit, and it says, oh, you have a field that hasn't been filled out that is required. But then my form is really long. Maybe I have multiple views. It's actually kind of difficult to catch the eye, this little red asterisk. Oh, this is the field that I need to fill out. So what I'd like to do here is actually give the user a little bit more of a visual indicator that that's actually required. So I'll go ahead and open up the rules manager here. And I'm going to go ahead and add a formatting rule. So we'll call this rule cannot be blank. And here's my condition. I'll talk a little bit more about conditions. But basically this condition, this rule is only going to run when this condition is true. So I want to make sure that, maybe it'll run all the time, which is fine. But in other cases, I only want it to run when a certain condition is true. And in this case, I only want this formatting rule to be applied when required is blank. Okay, there's many different operators here, but I'm going to use the isBlank operator. Click OK. So there we go. My conditions are done. And finally, I'm just going to set the background color of this control to this yellow. All right, so let's go preview it. So now you can see here, hopefully it comes out on your screen, that the cannot be blank field is now yellow, as well as the asterisk here. So it kind of pops at your eye a little bit more, shows you that, oh, okay, this is something that I need to attend to. And then if I fill out some test value here, you can see that that formatting goes away. Pretty simple technique. Definitely something I would recommend you doing for any of your blank fields. You can make it a little bit more in your face. You could make it red if you wanted to. I like the yellow just because it's a little bit subtle. It's not too jarring when you see it, but at the same time, it's nice to be able to catch your eye when you're quickly glancing the form. So I mentioned that you could copy rules. Also new in 2010, as I mentioned before, you can copy a single rule or you can copy multiple rules. So that's pretty easy to do. Let's see, I have a button here that has two rules here. So say if I want to go and copy a rule, I can click on this button here. There's copy rule. There's also copy all rules. Or I can right click here and say copy rule. And I can click on the second button here and then click on paste. And then there you have it. The rules automatically copied over to the second button. I could do copy all rules as well, copy all. And if I click on the second button and paste, you can see it copies both of the rules. Pretty useful feature, especially if I have, say, tabs and I have multiple buttons. I want to be able to copy all the rules on every tab. Any fields that you might have that you want to have multiple rules on. Even if I want to just tweak a certain variable, I only want these rules to run when certain value is equal to 1 and then the second value is equal to 2. I can keep on doing, I can keep on copying and pasting these rules as much as I want. One thing to be, just to be cautious of, say if I have another view, I have one view here, let's make a second one. And let's go ahead and add a button. If I go to the first view and I say copy all, and I'm going to go to the second view and I copy them on my button. Oh, that worked 1 second. I think it was for, let's see, I have to check out. I think that's for fields. So you can see here, if I go into view 1, what I did was I copied all the rules for debug, and then I go and switch to view 2, and then I see here I added this new field 1 as a text box. Oh, that's weird. it allows me to paste. In any case, what I was going to say is in some cases, and it's actually kind of inconsistent what happens. I haven't quite figured out why it does it and why it doesn't do it. But sometimes when you're switching fields, switching views, it won't let you paste rules. Sometimes it loses the rules on the clipboard. So just be careful if you're actually doing that. In some cases, you're better off just copying the control, or if it's actually a field. If it's actually a field in the task pane that is actually holding the rule, then you're better off just going copying here and then clicking on the other field without switching views. And in that case, you're probably going to be better off doing it that way, because then you won't actually lose your rules. All right, so really quickly here, there's two different types of rules. There's a field-based rule, and then there's a control-based rule. So what this means is that rules are either attached to a control or they're attached to a field. Meaning if you have a rule and it's attached to a field, say you delete that field, then basically that rule will go away as well. If you have a control, likewise, and a rule is attached to it, you delete the control, that rule will go away as well. And if you're familiar with InfoPath, for fields and controls have a relationship together that's called a binding. So every control has a field that is bound to, with a couple of exceptions, and likewise, most fields have a control that they're bound to. Multiple controls can actually be bound to a single field as well. So, so just something to be aware of if you are trying to delete some stuff and you are trying to delete some fields. Think about the consequences, because sometimes any rules that are attached to it will also get deleted. So just a general rule of thumb, what types of rules are field-based, what types of rules are control-based. Every validation rule is a field-based rule. So what I'm talking about here is, say, this cannot be blank rule. Say if I do a different cannot be blank rule, say if I actually said my condition is here is actually required is blank, and I can put a screen tip here, then that's a validation rule. So that is actually tied to the field itself. So I can go ahead and I can copy this and then I can put it to a separate field. Whereas if I had a formatting rule, this formatting rule here, that's actually tied to the control itself. So if I deleted the control, then the formatting rule will actually get deleted as well. An action rule is different. An action rule, if it's a button that is attached to, those are actually attached to the button itself, because buttons are actually one of those special controls that aren't bound to any fields. Whereas most other action rules are tied to the field, because those are actually conditioned on whether the field has changed. So actions are only triggered off of two conditions. One is when a field changes, that's when an action will be run, or if a button is pressed. Those are the only two. Those are the only two events that could happen that the rules will actually go and start kicking off. So when a field changes or when a button is pressed. So that's actually important to note. So, once you start exploring rules, you'll see that it's very, very powerful. It can get very, very complex as well. So, a lot of times, you write rule, and sometimes they don't actually go and, behave the way you expect it. Maybe they do nothing. Maybe they do something completely different. So, a lot of cases, you're going to have to start debugging some of your rules. And unfortunately, InfoPath doesn't really have a structure in order to debug rules very easily. So a couple of tips and tricks in order to help yourself debug some of these rules. A lot of errors occur basically because of the condition. There's a couple of conditions that might be incorrect. Maybe the logic, maybe you're using the wrong operator. Maybe there's a problem with an XPath or a function or something like that. So, your condition is like 90% of the time probably the culprit in why your rule isn't working. So check that out. And then the other probably 5% of the time is going to be the actual order of the rules. So of course, make sure you're doing the order of operations correctly. InfoPath always processes top down in terms of the rules. So if you make sure you want to set a field's value before you submit the form, rather than submitting the form and then setting the field's value, something like that. So make sure that the order of rules is correct. If you do get into the case where your condition is the one that's causing the problem, what I suggest is split up the conditions into separate rules. Now that you have copy and paste, it's very easy to do that. You don't have to go and redo all of the rules from scratch. You can copy them into separate conditions, and then what you can do is that you can now disable all of the actions until one remains. So if you see here, I have a debug field with multiple rules. I can go in, I drop down the form, I can click on disable, and then you'll see that it's grayed out here. And I can keep on disabling all the rules. And then what I would suggest is that now enable the rules one by one, so then that way you can see, okay, well, this part is still running. Okay, let's add another rule. Okay, this part's running. Okay, let's add another rule. Oh, okay, this part is where it's broken. So then now you can start narrowing down what condition is actually becoming false or becoming incorrect, that's not activating correctly, and then you can basically start there. If you are using a browser form, definitely recommend publishing to the server very often, simply because the browser sometimes behaves a little bit differently than the client. So as much as you're previewing, I would say maybe not as much as you're previewing, but every once in a while, publish to the server and preview the form on the server, just to be sure that everything is acting correctly. There are definitely some functions that I've encountered along the way that have not worked on the server, but have worked on the client. So definitely be sure to publish to the server often. And then the last tip here is use debug fields in your form. Basically, any fields, any temporary fields that you might want to store, or any sections that show maybe all of the data, then you want to include those in your form as much as possible. But then, of course, when you're actually releasing your form into production, it's actually live, you want to go and hide them. So use rules in order to do that. You can use rules like the formatting rule I just showed you. All right, and lastly, really talk really quick about conditions. There's the left field, there's the operator in the middle, and then there's the right field. This is what the condition dialog looks like. The right field may not necessarily be there, might be grayed out. As you saw in the blank example, all it says is say field 1 is blank. I don't need to compare it to another field on the right, but a lot of times it'll be a comparison where like field 1 is equal to field 2, something like that. Use formulas and filtering whenever possible. You know, you try to avoid using literal values like true, false, or not true, false, like numbers or like yes, no, that type of thing. Simply because then it's not a data-driven design anymore, and that you're hard-coding values, so you're actually going in and changing the values if you actually need to update the form. So whenever possible, use formulas and filtering. And then on the very far left-hand side, when you're actually creating a condition, show you what I mean here. There's a field, or there's like an option here called the expression, and that's really useful because this is actually the expression in XPath form, and this is actually useful in a lot of cases. And one of the useful cases is this next example here. If you ever used the conditions before, it's great, but you'll notice that if you start getting into more complex rules, you'll see that you only have 5 conditions that you can do. You actually can't do more than 5 conditions. And that's kind of frustrating sometimes because, you know, the conditions can be simple as when this field is not equal to this, and then maybe there's 6 of them that you need, as opposed to saying, oh, when it's equal to, and you have like 100 of these values. So what if you need that extra 1 condition? Well, it's actually possible. You're not limited to just 5 conditions. It's just a little bit tricky. There's a little bit of a workaround that you can do. So basically, here are the kind of steps. You have to use the expression, that trick that I just showed you, and you basically copy your formula in Notepad. Then you go and add your own operators. So say if it's an and or an or, you go ahead and add your own operator at the very end. Then you add your additional condition afterward, and then you just take that formula and you paste it back into the dialog. So I'll show you what I mean here. So if you see here, I have a rule that has a bunch of conditions here. I have debug is not equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's say I want to go and add 6. If I open the condition dialog, you can see here that the and is grayed out, so I can't add a 6th one. So that's a little bit frustrating, but we can work around that. So I'm going to go and select the expression here. I have this this formula, this XPath. So I'll go ahead and I'll open Notepad. in Notepad. So all of these are ands. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a space, add and. I'm going to go and paste this formula again, and I'll just modify this to include 6. So I'll just copy that. I can paste that back in here. Now this is a simple formula. I probably could have done it directly in this text box here, but a lot of formulas are going to be a lot more complicated than this, a lot longer. So in that case, I might want to copy the Notepad. All right, so that's pretty much it. Click on OK. And that's what it looks like in the condition dialog. Don't worry about it too much in terms of deciphering it, but I can assure you that this is going to work perfectly fine. So now you have now this condition is only going to run when debug is not equal 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, or 6. So if I had to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if I put something else, then and then that's going to go actually run the rule. It's going to set this to 100. I can go set, say, validation to foo, and I'm going to enable it. All right. 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that doesn't work. 6 doesn't work. And if I put in something else, you can see here now that the validation 1 is equal to foo. And it turned into 100 because I had another rule do that as well. And yeah, so hopefully that will help you in case you ever need more than 5 conditions. All right, and that wraps it up for my presentation. Went a little bit over, so appreciate you sticking around and to the very end. But hopefully, I know it's a pretty simple topic, especially if you're very familiar with InfoPath. But hopefully that served as sort of at least a refresher for you, or if you're not very familiar with InfoPath, taught you a little bit about rules and how to manage rules. There's definitely a lot more content that I could throw in here, but I just sort of kind of skimmed the surface to get you in the door in terms of understanding how the rules manager works. But definitely a very, very powerful tool. I recommend exploring it as much as possible. And yeah, thanks for joining us. I'll go and entertain some questions now. I heard there's a bunch of traffic going on while I was presenting. So let's see if I can go and answer some questions here. Okay. Yeah, so all these rules are definitely enabled on the browser as well. So you can definitely use all the rules as much as you want on the browser. I'm trying to think. There are a couple of rules that are I'm trying to think if there are a couple of rules that are not available on the browser. There probably are. One of them that I can think off the top of my head is there's an action rule that lets you show a dialog box. So that's only available on the client. That's not available on the server. But there are not too many rules that aren't available in the browser. That's just one off that I can think of. But I would say like 95% of the rules are available on the browser. Maybe even more. Maybe that's the only rule. Okay. Validation rules. Yeah, so validation rules, are they enabled on the browser? Yes, validation rules are enabled on the browser. So, same. So all the different types of rules are validation, formatting, after rules. So, Sudhakar answered the question that I had just answered. So, thanks, Sudhakar. All right, let's see. I have a checkbox that would be true if a client is going to training. How do I make an event date field validate for, on, or after a departure date, and on or before a return date, but only if that checkbox value is true? I get validation errors and can't submit if the training checkbox is false. So sorry, Nancy, I'm trying to wrap my head around your question here. So if a checkbox that would be true, if a client is going to training, how to make an event date field validate for a departure date and before return date, but only if the so yeah. Basically, what you want to do here is you want to, so as long as you have both of the parts built, so you have before that particular, what was it, return date, and after a departure date, then you have to just add an additional condition that says, and the checkbox is equal to true. And that's pretty much it. So you have basically three conditions. So you say after date, departure date field, and before return date field, and checkbox is equal to true, and that's it. And that'll and then you can have some validation rule, or you can have an action that says some sort of field value. That's pretty much how you would set up that condition. Okay, so Mike has a question. Is there a way to search through your rules for a value to reference fields? Rule inspector seems like a static tool. It doesn't seem to allow you to interact with the rules. So yeah, that's a good question, Mike. So the rule inspector, I'll show you that real quick here. So the rule inspector is actually a pretty neat tool. To get to that, you have to go to data. And there's this rule inspector button. And what this does is it basically shows you all the rules that are on the form. This is not limited to just rules, actually. This is actually this shows you default values. This shows you any programming. If you have any custom code on your form, it shows you that. But unfortunately, there's no find function. So if you do want to find all the rules that are associated to a field, the best way I would do is actually just click on the field. You can see all the rules that are associated to an individual field. But if you want to just find all of the, maybe all of the rules that a particular field is part of, there is no easy way to do that, unfortunately. Rule inspectors may be your best bet. If you are a little bit more tech savvy, what you could do is actually save the InfoPath form as source files, and then open up the manifest and actually search through the manifest itself. All the rules are in there. It's basically XML, so you can go and search that yourself. But again, that's a little bit more of a tech savvy tool, opening that up in Notepad, say. So that's something I would not suggest to all the users out there. Something that I would only suggest to the people that are more comfortable to actually do that. So Justin asks, is there a limit or a practical limit to the number of controls you can attach to a single field of control? There is no limit, but there is, I would say, a practical limit. I definitely wouldn't recommend putting a lot of rules on a form, or sorry, on a single field or single control, simply because it becomes unmanageable. Definitely try to combine as many actions or basically as many actions as you can on a single field. If a bunch of actions are being performed based on the same condition, that's a good indicator to store them on the same field, on the same rule. Simply because then you can avoid having multiple rules with the same condition and different actions. There's an exception to that, of course. If you do need certain actions to be performed in a certain order based on the same condition, then in that case you might want to go and split them up into separate fields. All right, let's see. Janae's asking an off-topic question. Can you programmatically inject an InfoPath field into a SharePoint term store? To be honest, I don't know off the top of my head. If I had to guess, yes, I think you can. There are APIs in SharePoint to allow you to connect to a term store, and you can retrieve and add fields into the term store. So if I had to guess, you probably can. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't know what exactly the functions are in order to do that, so that's something to investigate on your own, potentially. Or you can go to InfoPath Dev and see if anyone has done that before, and some folks might be able to respond. Yeah, no problem. All right, so looks like that's it for questions. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. In case you have any last-minute questions, feel free to go and type them in the chat window. But otherwise, again, thanks everybody for joining us. If you like this particular webinar, feel free to send us feedback at the course manager at Qdabra.com alias. Especially if this is kind of the level of the webinar you'd like to see in the future. If you're just a beginner in InfoPath and are learning kind of the ropes, and this is is kind of the difficulty level that you're expecting, feel free to go and send feedback. We're always looking for ways to improve the webinar. We also try to cater to as many people as we can. So it'd be nice to see, what you guys thought about this particular topic. Oh, Nancy has a good question. So order of operations and rules, if you wanted to do a combination of something like that. So order of operations is not really